Now what if I told you that watching Sinners was like watching a mainstream Indian film? Hear me out. I feel like this movie would make a really good video game. The TLDR of this review is that Sinners tells an engaging and exciting story, it looks gorgeous, the performances are so charming, and the music, which is a really big part of the film, is just really, really good. Ryan Coogler doesn't seem to miss. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Bala, and Rocket Park is an indie filmmaking channel where my creative friends and I make no-budget indie films and share our learnings as we grow. Today, I'm going to share with you my thoughts on the movie Sinners. If you've grown up watching movies at the cinema, then you know what that experience can be like when it's done right. That communal experience of being in a dark room with a whole bunch of strangers with your popcorn and your ice cream. The lights go down after the last trailer plays and everybody's sitting in anticipation to watch this film together. And then the movie starts, and if it's good, everyone in that room just gets lost in the story and completely absorbed in the world of the film. Everyone laughs together at all the jokes, and everyone gasps together at all the scary bits. There is something special about the cinema experience, and I feel like we're having that less and less these days. There's so much amazing content on streaming sites that we just stay at home and watch it all on our TVs. I don't remember the last time I had that cinema experience, but Sinners gave me and everyone else in that cinema experience, and it was a damn good time at the movies. Sinners is the brand new movie by Ryan Coogler, starring Michael B. Jordan, which at this point is a given if it's a Ryan Coogler film. Somehow I had no idea that Ryan Coogler had released a new film. I just randomly came across an interview with the cast on Instagram, but as soon as I realized that it was a Ryan Coogler film, I stopped scrolling. I didn't want to know anything about the film, so I didn't watch the trailer, I didn't read the synopsis or anything like that. I just booked tickets to the film that night. I really love going to the movies without knowing anything about the film, so I can be surprised by everything in it, and I'm really glad I went into Sinners without knowing anything. Before I start spoiling things, I will say this if you haven't seen the film. It's marketed as a horror film, but I'd say it's actually more of a creepy action thriller with a few jump scares here and there. If like me you don't usually watch horror films because you're scared, you'll get through this and you will enjoy it. It's not that scary. Now I can tell that it's a film I loved when I get home and I instantly Google everything to do with the film. Over the last few days I've been watching all the interviews with Ryan Coogler and the cast and crew, all the video essays, all the movie reviews, and I've tried to find as much behind the scenes content as I can. So all of my thoughts here are going to be informed by what I've seen and heard and read. Sinners tells the story of a pair of twins and their nephew starting a new juke joint in Mississippi in 1932, which is a great success until the party is interrupted by a master Irish vampire. What's really satisfying about Sinners off the bat is that it's an original premise. It's not a sequel, it's not a reboot, it's not a remake, it's not an adaptation of a novel or anything, it's just pure Ryan Coogler creativity. He did a lot of research for this, and it's a really personal film for him, but it's a completely original script and a completely original idea. There are layers to this movie, and I'm still unpacking. I feel like it presents so many different arguments about so many different topics, like how creative talent is always inevitably going to be co-opted, about how minority-owned businesses or ventures or ideas can't just be left alone, and about how the downtrodden or oppressed will always look to other downtrodden or oppressed communities to either continue oppressing or find solidarity, depending on whether you think becoming a vampire is a good or bad thing in this movie. To me personally, the film felt like it was talking about a lot of issues that we face here in New Zealand, like the crabs in a bucket mentality or tall poppy syndrome. Both of these are really pervasive issues where we tend to tear down anyone who tries anything or takes a risk, or we don't let anyone become successful because then that means that we're the failure. In one of the interviews I watched, Ryan Coogler talks about cinema being like a language.
And like a language, you know, you can be conversational, you know what I mean? You can understand it when it's spoken to you and not be able to speak it. You know, you can understand it and speak it, but not be able to write it. You know, I like to consider myself fluent in cinematic language.
To me, this was a new way of thinking about cinema, and to me, a really interesting one that I think is so true. As someone who grew up speaking multiple languages, I know exactly that feeling of being able to understand perfectly what someone is saying, but not being able to speak back in that language, or not being able to fully grasp the deeper meaning or the vibe of what is being said. It's like hearing poetry in a language you didn't grow up with. Like maybe you understand the literal words that are being said, but you might not get the full cultural context or the deeper connotations because it's just so complex. A I think this film is complex like that, and I think it's dense, and I think people will be unpacking deeper meanings and hidden symbolic interpretations for a long time to come. But more than all this, what I really enjoyed about the movie was just that it was a fun and exciting story with really likable characters. A lot of people have said that they found the first act boring, where we just watch the twins go around town recruiting everyone that they need to work at the juke joint, but honestly I found the stuff really fun to watch. Each time we meet a new character in this film, it feels like they get a really chunky scene where we get to know a lot of the backstory of this character and also the twins and the history of this community. Some of the most memorable scenes are when we first meet the characters, like Annie in her hut or Lisa in her shop, or the car scene with Delta Slim. Just spending time with characters like this is what makes you really like films like this. It's not just the action and the set pieces and the gore and the exciting stuff in the second half. None of that stuff would have mattered if we didn't understand these characters and their relationships, their personalities, their dreams. Basically, the writing was so solid and the performances were so real and engaging that there wasn't really any point in this movie where I drifted or I got bored. Like I said before, the performances are really solid across this film. Everybody is really charming and natural, and they just make it look so easy. Another thing I really liked about this film is that all the characters are likable. I think we've been through a phase over the last 10-15 years of unlikable characters or anti-heroes becoming really popular, with Game of Thrones and Breaking Bad and other films as well. But what I really liked about this movie is that everybody is actually really likable. Like, I would be down to hang out with any one of these characters, even the Master Vampire, to be honest. He seems really cool. Michael B. Jordan is the epitome of cool in this film, and in both his roles. He plays the twins, and I can't imagine how hard that would have been, but he makes it look really easy. Everyone across the board is just really good. This film really felt like an ensemble film, even though so many of the characters had minor roles. Every single character still felt really fleshed out and lived in, which makes it really satisfying to see them interact with each other and see those relationships come out. Sinners looks gorgeous. This movie was shot on actual film in 2 different formats, and it's bloody beautiful. The colors are just so rich, the textures feel so tactile and real, and the images really make you feel like you're immersed in the world. It feels like you're actually there with them. I feel like the camera work in this film is weird because on the one hand you don't notice it and it's really natural, but on the other hand there's this bold and confident swag to it. There's a vibe to this film where it just announces itself to be what it is, and I feel like the camera work is a big part of that. And Black Panther also had this similar swag, and I wonder what it is that Ryan Coogler's doing to convey that feeling of like unapologetic confidence. People always talk about cinematography being the reason why a film looks really great, but the other part of the visuals that I think people don't talk enough about is the design. Unless you actually make films, it's hard to understand how much of a role design plays in making your film actually look good. You could have the most expensive camera and the flashiest lenses in the world, but if what you're pointing the camera at just doesn't look interesting, then your film won't be a visually appealing film. When I say design, I'm talking about the art department who takes care of the sets and all the props, the costumes who takes care of the costumes, and also the hair and makeup. And in this film, I feel like all of these artists have brought something beautiful and interesting for the camera to capture. From the set of the juke joint itself, to all the period costumes that everyone's wearing, to the blood and gore and the hair and makeup, to even the locations, it's all just really beautiful to look at. The music in Sinners is obviously a huge part of not only the style and vibe of the film, but also the actual story. There's more thematic arguments and stuff to unpack here when it comes to the music, like how the blues music is related to bringing forth the devil, and how the skill of Sammy or Preacher Boy is what actually draws the Master Vampire to the juke joint. Music is one of those art forms that has the power to transcend barriers of ethnicity, age, culture, gender, or any other identity markers you can think of. I didn't grow up listening to blues music, but through this movie you can feel the rich history of the art form and the personal passion that these artists have. And for the 2 hours of this movie, I became a huge fan of blues music. Now what if I told you that watching Sinners was like watching a mainstream Indian film? Hear me out. Everyone who's seen the film will remember the song that Preacher Boy sings, which is all filmed in one take, where musicians from the past and the future are summoned, and the performance is so good that it literally burns the roof down. Audiences are going crazy over how creative this scene is with its world bending, and it is. but it's a language that exists in other forms of cinema. Like, to me, it felt like the film was just paying homage to Bollywood or other Indian film styles. Mainstream Indian cinema is often reduced to this idea of everything being a musical, but I've always thought that's not accurate. Indian cinema has music, and it has song and dance, but it's not all musicals, unless you're now saying that Sinners is a musical. I think calling Indian films musicals puts a lot of people off Indian cinema because the word musical has its own strong connotations which come from musical theatre traditions. And the performance styles in musical theatre traditions are always bold, loud, melodramatic, and it's awesome if you like it, but a lot of people don't like musical theatre. And if you think all Indian cinema is like musical theatre, then you're missing out. If you liked Sinners and you liked the music and you liked the interplay between music and story and character, you might like some Indian films. I feel like it's safe to assume that a lot of people who like Sinners also like hip-hop music, right? And so to those people who might be interested in watching an Indian film, I would say try and watch Gully Boy. You will really like it. If you like hip-hop and you loved Sinners, you will love Gully Boy. It's one of my favorite films of all time. The point is that Indian cinema is so diverse, so broad, and of course there are terrible films, but it's such a huge group of industries that you can't reduce it to just one style or just one word, musical. Sinners genuinely reminded me of some of the classic Indian films that I grew up watching in the early 2000s, where you remember the soundtrack of the film as vividly as you remember the movie itself. I'm talking about films like Lagan or Swades, where I still remember the scenes where the music told the story, just like when Preacher Boy burnt the roof down. Sinners reminded me of those films, even though they have nothing in common when it comes to story, but more that those films, like Sinners, treated music in this same way, as this powerful emotional tool to literally take us to other worlds and make us feel something. Preacher Boy's song is a good example of this, but so is the song that Perlene sings. Those wide shots where everyone is dropping down to the beat, they're almost doing choreographed dance, but it's still loose enough to feel natural. That song felt like it was almost a choreographed song and dance sequence from Bollywood, and that's not a bad thing. Another great example of this is Remix's song Outside with the Vampires, when they all sing Rocky Road to Dublin and he's doing the Irish dance. It's really satisfying to see skilled performers dance to a catchy song. That is just fact, and it's what makes musical theatre so great if you like musical theatre. But it feels like people in the West are only just starting to discover that you can have song and dance and still have the world of the film be dark and gritty and real with naturalistic performances for like 90% of the movie. I don't think musical is an appropriate word for something like Sinners, and if it's not appropriate for Sinners, I don't think we should be using the word musical for most of Indian cinema. But I don't know what that word is. I guess to me they've always just been movies, because to me all movies have songs or have music. Anyway, all that to say, the music was bloody great in this film, and it treats it in a way that has a lot of people astounded or mind blown, but it was familiar to me, and that made me love the film even more. I feel like this movie would make a really good video game. You have all these memorable characters that band together at this one location to survive the night, and all these vampires are trying to get in. It reminded me of Gears of War's Horde mode or something. Like, there was one specific moment that I remember really clearly that it felt like it was the end of a video game cutscene and you were just about to switch into the gameplay mode and control the character. It's that shot tracking back inside the joint after they've invited the vampires in and everyone's grabbing their weapon and getting ready and forming a line almost. It's like the Avengers assembling. Before I get out of here, I want to touch on the cinematic experience for a minute. The last few times I've been to the movies, the cinema hasn't been that full, and honestly it's been a bit of a shame. I know some people like having the cinema to themselves, but for me, the whole point of going to the movies is that it's a communal experience. It's one of the only places where people from all walks of life who might have nothing else in common will come together to enjoy this movie as a group. So when I recently watched Mickey 17 or the New Zealand film Tina, both of which were actually really great films, it was a bit of a shame that there were like only 6 or so people in there. But when we walked into the cinema for Sinners, I was pleasantly surprised to see it buzzing. It was almost a full house, and that makes such a difference when you're watching a big movie on a big screen, especially a horror. The box office success of this movie means that it's bringing people out of their homes and back to the movies. And I hope the studios and funders will see this as a sign to trust that fresh ideas from talented filmmakers will result in beautiful and interesting films that people will want to see on the big screen. So I hope they take more risks and make more original movies rather than churning out the same old sequel or reboot or remake or whatever. Sinners has proven that risks can pay off. It's a great film that I want to watch at the movies again and again. It's just that good of a cinematic experience. Anyway, that's it from me. What did you think of the movie? Let me know in the comments below, and until the next time, thanks for watching. Bye.